Hi everyone, it's Ren here. How you doing? Welcome to my room. And no, today I'm not going to be joking about the presence or absence of my cat on my bed, because I can attest to the fact that my cat is resting very tranquilly on the sofa downstairs. I was having a lovely time with my dad. He came by a little bit earlier, just for a chat. Hadn't seen him in a while, and so we're just chilling, having a chat, having a bit of whiskey, being real men, and my cat feeling very comfortable, feeling very, very trusting, joined, and had a little nap next to us, and she's still napping because she likes that. But that's not the point of this video. So, what do I want to talk about today? It's a bit late because my dad stayed until nearly 6, so hopefully hopefully the lighting is still okay. I feel like it's still okay because it's the spring is approaching, so days are getting a bit longer, which is helpful. Well, yeah, I wanted to sort of tackle briefly, or maybe not so briefly, this question of leaving a trace, the question of of envisaging one's existence as something that cannot be solely dedicated to espousing the traditional approaches to living and doing the social, cultural things that and institutional things that one is supposed to do, like growing up, studying, getting a job, meeting someone, getting married, having children or not having children, progressing with one's career, starting a family, doing these various things. I mean, it seems to me that the immense majority, when I'm looking around me, the immense majority of people seems to eventually be sort of content with that. I'm not saying that people are not ambitious enough, because you can be extremely ambitious with your job. You could perceive the sort of raising of one's family as something that is takes precedence over everything else, especially if you have children and they become your your number one focus. I mean, I do not have children, so I can't say, but those who have children pretty much all say that. So I mean, that's one thing, but as of right now, what seems to me to be kind of a good description of my life as I envisage it is that it's a life that is the life of a regular human being for the most part, but it's still a life that's dominated by this idea that I would not want to just live a traditional, conventional life, if you want to call it that. I would like to live a life in which I try to leave some kind of trace, in which I leave some kind of heritage or some kind of legacy, or maybe not so much because I want to have some sort of reputation or prestige or whatever, because that's not really the case, but I don't want to feel like I'll be leaving this world. I mean, now that's not now, that's not right now, hopefully, but let's say that when I come to the end of my life, which is going to happen sooner or later, maybe in 2070 or 80, hopefully, I sort of don't want to get to the end and be like, I could have done more. I could have done so much more, and I just lived just regular life. It's just regular life. It's more or less content, and I mean, like, perhaps if and when I have children, which I plan on having, and it's something that I've become aware of more recently, but this is something that I've changed my mind towards, and I'm happy I have, and I'm happy about that. But we'll see when. It's not on the books quite yet. But like, leaving this aside for now, because I can't really speak about that specifically, I want to give the best of myself to something that I feel passionate about. And as you probably know already at this point, this thing, as I conceive of it, is the domain of creative writing, and, well, I mean, the domain of philosophy more specifically, because philosophy is distinct from creative writing. I guess it's more of a human science, you could call it that. It has its own template, its own methodology, at least to some extent. you can't exactly compare it to creative writing, although from a certain perspective, creative writing and philosophy, I mean, there's a connection. When you're engaged in the activity of writing philosophy, you are writing creatively. But that's beside the point. What I mean to say is, I mean, I wrote lots of things that were literary rather than philosophical, you know, plays, poems, and even a novel. Now, it's a manuscript and it's been refused by 40 publishers last year, which is completely okay. I was prepared for this possibility, and I still think the experience was super useful, and I haven't necessarily given up on the book, but currently my projects are more philosophical. Now the book I've written, the novel, explores philosophical themes also from a literary fictional point of view, that, you know, themes that are quite similar to those explored in my current open monism notebook. But right now my priority is to have kind of this notebook for my own sense of posterity, in a sense. And sometimes I ask myself the question, like, what is it that I'm really looking for? Why am I dedicating so much time to philosophy and to this like framework, to this system, let's say open monism? Is it because, you know, there are multiple possibilities? And I'm also interested in sort of trying to identify whether there's a link between this kind of, well, you could say it's an obsession. It's an idée fixe, as I think the English speaking people say it too. It's an idée fixe of mine. Is it because I'm completely focused on it because I for many years I've been compensating for a somewhat unsatisfying job that was not challenging enough and that was not giving me the sort of intellectual stimulus that I needed, and so I sort of committed all of it to philosophical writing? It's one possibility. Then there's another possibility, which is, do I do that because I enjoy the image of being someone who thinks and someone who commits those thoughts to paper? It's another possibility. And the third possibility would be, do I do it a lot just simply because it's a passion and I love doing it and I'm not really thinking about anything else? Or then there's a fourth possibility, which is, am I doing it, and it could be combined with these other things, and I'm pretty sure that the motivations and the reasons are at the end of the day combined, is that, the fourth possibility would be, I hate the idea of feeling like I have some sort of potential, just like any human being has a potential, you know. So we're not talking quantitatively here, we're talking qualitatively. And this is actually quite familiar territory for the open monism framework, actually, which I sort of tend to define as my NI vision, as I sometimes like to call it, or to label it. But everyone is a potential of a certain sort. We're all born into the world with a capability of, you know, doing things in the world, and we must have, each and every one of us must have some ability to unfurl in a particular domain in which they will have their most added value and where they will excel the most. And this is an idea that really interests me and really has import for me, let's say. It does have a personal import, and I think it's also an interesting philosophical idea, an interesting sociological idea, psychological idea. This question of having like inherently an innate potential in a certain number of domains where one excels. So maybe if you're talking about, say, like if you're talking about probably like someone who's very ISTP, or someone who's very practically minded and who's very intelligent in that domain, you know, that's the added value is probably going to be different than the added value of an INFJ type. And then within the INFJs, there's like the whole spectrum of different, you know, stripes of INFJs. According to the Dave Superpower's objective personality model, which is a very interesting model, like there are 32 different types of INFJ. It's crazy. Interestingly enough, on the INFJs.com forum that I'm a member of, that I really recommend you join, there's a guy, an INTP, well, ENTP now. He discovered that he was an ENTP rather than INTP, thanks to the objective personality model that he considers very useful, and he watched a number of my videos and identified me as a certain kind of INFJ according to that framework. and it wasn't what I expected, because I guess like we could sort of draw a line of demarcation between, and that according to that model, the NITI INFJs and then the NIFE INFJs. And what's quite fascinating is that I've always thought that I was perceived as more as an NITI INFJ, and it's probably what I am in some respects. But he identified me more as an NIFE INFJ, which, by the way, it'd be interesting if you watch this and if you have any opinion on the matter, if I come across more NITI or more NIFE, I'd love to know. So drop a comment and let me know what you think for my own self-development, self-awareness development. But in any case, whatever stripe of INFJ I am, whatever strand, whatever is my kind of peculiar ilk, I wonder if there's a link between that and this notion that I'm not content with just living life without really thinking about the meaning of that life, without really thinking about the kind of direction I want for my life, the kind of transcendence I want for my life. So instead of just being this human life, I like it to be something that I do something with. So I can say my life was not just about living, it was also about doing this. So for example, again, if you're someone very practical, it could be something as simple on the paper, but maybe super significant, like being someone who ends up living in a house they themselves built, design and built. So it's a beautiful idea, and I came across this idea like in the work of some intellectual, who I believe is an S type, an ISTP most likely. It says, my life goal is to live in a house that I designed and built myself. And I think it's a great idea. It's one example of what such a life goal could be, that transcends things like just conventional, arguably essential but conventional things that have more to do with having a job, enjoying oneself, having friends, having a family. Something that transcends that, taking into account how much importance that must hold in one's life. I do not deny it, and I very much treasure that prospect. Well, treasure what it already is, and in what way I want to bring it further in terms of my own life, my own future family. There is this need for transcendence, this need for something more. It's not about a house, because I'm not a practical person, and that's not really where I see my added value anyway. It's more as far as I'm concerned, from what I've seen, and from not just from what I've seen of my talents, let's say, but also from what I've seen of where my real innermost core interests and passions and drives reside. That's in philosophy. That's in existential phenomenology. More to be super specific, existential phenomenology and researches into meaning. And to create in this system that has this moral dimension as well, because there's out of that framework that I'm developing, there will be a system of ethics of how to live a good life according to this vision. And that's very much what I invest my time in. It's not building a house, it's building open monism. It's much more abstract, but it is my baby. It is the thing that I'm working on. It is the thing that I'm perfecting, and which to me instantiates this fulfillment to the best of my ability of the modest little potential that life gave me. And I see it as almost incumbent upon me to bring it to fruition. To not leave it being sort of dormant, or let it wilt in some corner from want of being watered. It's that idea of growth, constant growth. And it's true that I often come across this idea that INFJs are into constant growth and perfectionism, and the two things are not quite connected. They're not quite the same thing. They're connected, but they're not the same thing. Growth and perfectionism are not the same thing, but there's a link there. I think it's quite intuitive to feel that there's a link there. And I'm just wondering what it is, and what is it for you? Do you think that there's a link between having a certain type, say an INFJ, and not just being a perfectionist, which is well known for INFJs, but also seeing life as a perpetual project of self-improvement, improving oneself, bringing the best out of oneself, and feeling like this particular activity and movement of bringing the best out of oneself, not just taking life as it is for granted, the usual aspects, the conventional dimensions of life that we're all familiar with, and that it seems to me that most people subscribe to unthinkingly, mostly. They're not busy themselves with thinking that, regardless of who they are. And I mean, with all due respect, I'm not criticizing them. That's how, at the end of the day, someone may very well argue, and I think that would be a very strong argument that has to be taken into account and has to be met, has to be discussed, is someone might say, yeah, okay, I'm not seeing life in terms of this project that I have to fulfill across my life. I see life as something that if I lead it a certain way, which could be more conventional or less predicated upon constant improvement, it brings me contentment, brings me happiness. I'm happy. I have my family. I have those I love, and that's my project. That's what I want to content myself with, and that's enough. I mean, if that leads to the happiness of a person, how could you argue with it? There's no reason to. It doesn't really make sense to say, no, you're happy, but that's not enough. You should try to bring. You should look at yourself, find your innermost potential, and try to bring the best version of this potential in some kind of actual material form. Not to say material form, but actual form, so that it exists. So, for example, in my case, it would be open monism exists. In one of my friends' case, could be this house that he himself built exists, and he lives in it, and it's his life project. Or it could be, it could be so many other things. It could be just. It could be something like, if you take it to its extremity, you could see that in Elon Musk, for example, INTJ. I think Elon Musk, who seems to think that his life does not make sense if he doesn't try his utmost to further, exploration of space, potential colonization of Mars in relationship to his vision, electricity, cars. So with this whole planetary dimension, so I'm not saying everybody has to be like Elon Musk, but there is this dimension of having a vision, having a project, and being focused on accomplishing it in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't have to be an obsessive thing, but something that's always in the background. And I'm just wondering, is that an NI thing? Is that connected to NI somehow, or is it really something that any type could have? Do INFJs, a bit like myself, are they more likely to see life as this quest for constant improvement? And if that is the case, is it more, do you guys take the approach more like I take it, which seems to be more geared towards a particular field, a particular project that I want to bring to fruition, and that's what's giving life its transcendental meaning in addition to its immanent meaning? Or do you see this process of constant improvement as not necessarily focused on a single project, but more on continuing to learn, continuing to be open to new experiences in general? Let me know in the comments, guys. I'll talk to you soon. Have a lovely Sunday. Ciao.